As you're laboring in a city trying to reach large communities of lost people, it can be overwhelming. So we want to examine the scriptures to see, did Jesus give us any strategy for how to reach a lot of people in an area? And fortunately, he did. And one example we see in John 4 with the example of the woman at the well. This is an example of what we would call a person of peace. And I'll just summarize this story real quick. One day, Jesus and his disciples were passing through Samaria, and his disciples went into town to look for food. And Jesus goes to a well where he meets a woman who's drawing water. He strikes up a conversation with her about water, but quickly turns it to a spiritual conversation. He brings up her need for him, her sin, and then presents himself to her as the Messiah. Well, immediately she leaves her water jars and runs back to the village and proclaims to everyone, "Come see this Jesus, this man. He told me everything I've ever done. Could he be the Christ?" And the scripture tells us that many in that town believed because of the woman's testimony, and that many more believed because of Jesus' words. So here we see an example of Jesus and his disciples entering into an area, a city, a village where there are a lot of lost people. And he finds this God-prepared person that he had planned to use to reach this community who brought them to him. So as you're praying through and considering large amounts of lost people in your city, we want to pray and ask God to lead us to these types of people. And there's some characteristics of a person of peace. The first is that they receive the messenger. As Jesus went to approach this woman and he asked her for water, she provided hospitality and gave him water. She received him. The second thing that we notice is that they will receive the message. That's the gospel. This woman heard the message of the gospel of who Jesus was, and she repented and believed in him. And then the third thing that we notice about a person of peace is that they receive the mission. She immediately left her jars and went back to the town to tell everybody about her encounter with Jesus. And as a result, many of them came and met Jesus, and almost that entire village came to follow him. So this woman at the well is a great example of what we'd call a person of peace. So go ahead with your training buddy and practice this module of a person of peace by just summarizing the story, and then give the three examples or the three characteristics of what a person of peace is. So we've seen this one example in John 4, but if this is truly a strategy that Jesus is using, we would want to see more examples from the Bible. So can you think of some other examples from the Bible of this person of peace? Well, yeah, okay, so we have the woman at the well that we see in John 4. And that's right, we have Levi, the tax collector, in Mark 2. And, yep, the demoniac that we find in Mark 5. And we also have Zacchaeus in Luke 19. And yep, we've got the Ethiopian in Acts 8. And Cornelius in Acts 10. And that's right, we have Lydia and the jailer, which are both found in Acts 16. And that's right, another good example is Crispus that we find in Acts 18. So we can see that the woman at the well was not just one isolated example in the Bible of a person of peace. It was used a number of times, but I want you to notice also that it wasn't just in the Gospels, that the disciples then followed that example in Acts. So is it possible that Jesus was modeling a strategy that his disciples then followed, that he wants us to use today as we're going into cities, trying to reach people, that we would pray and ask God to lead us to these persons of peace who will receive the messenger, receive the message, and receive the mission, so we could see no place left.